Hello and welcome to the Hookshot on the Miracle Sports Network. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Nate. Today we are talking about our off-season preview for the Southwest Division teams.
So if you joined us last week, we are doing the exact same thing as last week, where we are going to go through each team, break down how they did, the players on their team, free agents, a little bit on trades, and a little bit of draft picks. So we will be setting a timer for 11 minutes on each team and be going from worst to best in the division. So to start us off, we have the New Orleans Pelicans. So they finished 30 and 42 last season, which was 13th in the conference. They had the 17th best offense, 19th best defense. Clearly, the Pelicans had a lot of excitement coming into the season with Zion, who spent a lot of time hurt, and also Brandon Ingram, who just won Most Improved Player of the Year. But they have a lot of picks on their team. They have 13, 39, 42, and 60 this year, and Nathan will break those down.
Yeah, so under contract right now, they have Lonzo Ball, Drew Holiday, JJ Redick, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Josh Hart, Darius Miller, Zion Williamson, Nico Lomelli, and Jackson Hayes.
Right. Do you have any targets that maybe they should look at 13?
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of directions they could go at 13. First of all, they could potentially trade it. I think they'd make the pick, but they're in a decent position to maybe get a winger to drop, or maybe a forward like an Aaron Nesmith or Sadiq Bey. They could go another big. They just took Jackson Hayes 8th overall last year, but Pokusevski could be there. Jalen Smith could be there. And if they want a point guard, there should be plenty of point guards, and that might just be BPA at that pick. And then in the second round, they have picks 39 and 42, which those are two very good picks to have with just how deep the talent in this draft is. And there should really be people at any position really they could take there.
Yes, this team also has a lot of free agents. So they have 3 restricted free agents of Frank Jackson, Kenrick Williams, and Brandon Ingram. And so I thought Frank Jackson and Kenrick Williams could leave. I don't think the team needs to keep them as they are bottom bench guys mostly. Well, Frank Jackson, I guess, is kind of one of their backup point guards, but I think if you get one in the draft, it's not a big deal. And then Brandon Ingram, I say they should match pretty much anything. I think he could get close to a max, if not a max. I'm not really sure where his ceiling quite is, as he has shown really good improvement and is still pretty young. And then unrestricted free agents, they have Derek Favors, Jahlil Okafor, and Etwan Moore. Derek Favors, I don't know if the team's gonna be able to afford him, depending on what he goes. If they were to re-sign him, I think he could get maybe 12 million a year, close to that. Etwan Moore, I think the team could just let walk. They can get someone with that ability pretty easily. And Jahlil Okafor, they could go over cap and re-sign him for pretty much the minimum. And I thought he's definitely a minimum worthy player last year on their team. So that's my recommendations. Nate, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think clearly the big priority here is Brandon Ingram. I would
Right.
assume he'd get a max, if not from the Pelicans, from somewhere.
I think so too.
And I mean, you should just match whatever that is. And then Frank Jackson, if he's cheap enough, or maybe if he'll just take the qualifying offer, he could be. I mean, I thought he improved a decent amount this year. He's still really raw and he's still young, but you could always replace him with one of those 3 picks in a pretty point guard heavy draft. And I'd maybe bring back Derek Favors on another 1-year contract, just because I don't like the only center they have under contract is Jackson Hayes,
Right.
and I I don't really think Jackson Hayes is quite ready for a full-time starting role.
I
And
think
I
they
don't
like
think
him, but just
yeah,
not
but
quite yet.
I mean they just do what they did this year where they had Derek Favors start at the 5 when he was healthy.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it for their guys. I would let like each one more walk. And Kenrich Williams is, I mean, maybe as a depth guy, I feel like he carved out a pretty big role like 2 years ago on the Pelicans, maybe a year ago. But this season he definitely just didn't have that much of a role. And there's more minutes going to other guys like maybe like Nicolo Melli, who they got last year,
Hmm.
stepping into some of those minutes, and there just aren't many minutes. I know he's restricted, but I don't know. I mean, I like him. I wouldn't mind having him back, but it may just be better for both sides to part there.
Yeah. And Frank Jackson has a qualifying offer of 2 million. So
Hmm.
if they offer that, I would think he'd maybe take that.
Maybe.
Um, all right. So moving on to off-season things. Uh, I thought they should target a guard with their mid-level exception, especially if Frank Jackson leaves. So I thought maybe they could get like a Jordan Clarkson or a Jeff Teague, someone who can just kind of come off the bench and supply a little bit of scoring. Though they're not necessarily the best players.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to getting a guard. I'd almost just rather if you wanted a guard, take a point guard at 13,
That's
maybe.
fair. Yeah.
And also, I'm a really big fan of Nickeil Alexander-Walker from last year, who they got at 17, and I'd love to see him get more minutes. And also with JJ Redick and Josh Hart in there, I think I think a lot depends on what they're going to do with their guards, whether or not they're going to keep them. Because there's been trade rumors around Drew Holiday for almost like 2 years now, and there's
Mhm.
been for whatever reason there's been trade rumors around Lonzo Ball this offseason too. So I think it depends on what they do with those main two guys there.
Yeah, I like this team, and I think this team will get better. Uh, so I don't really have big trades necessarily for this team. I suppose they could do some sign and trade of Derek Favors if a team really wants him, potentially, or JJ Redick I had in mind. He's some strong contender wanting someone like a JJ Redick on their team, as he might not necessarily fit the timeline as well in New Orleans as some other team. But I don't really have necessarily specific trades for either one of those, as I couldn't really figure out or have any great ideas what New Orleans would really want back. Um,
Yeah, at that point, I'd probably just keep JJ Redick just for the 3-point threat. The Pelicans were
yeah,
seventh in 3-point percentage last year, but with the way their roster is constructed, I feel like it's really great for them to have spacing, as it is for like every team. But with like your centerpiece out there as like Zion, and he's not necessarily the floor spacer, it's good to have
right.
other floor spaces around him.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I had one trade idea, or this one guy, and that was revisiting the Drew Holiday trade. And Drew Holiday's a great player, but I think they could maybe just get some. He's on the last year of his contract, and I would at least look at like your options just to see what you could get to fit the timeline. Because you look at your core and you have like Lonzo, Zion, Bi, Hayes, Alexander Walker. They're all really young guys,
Right.
and Drew Holiday just doesn't really fit that timeline necessarily. So the first idea was to Denver because I think Denver could really benefit from adding a guy like Drew Holiday as their starting shooting guard. And coming back, they could get I mean they could get like Gary Harris, Will Barton would be the first guys to think of to match salary. But then also Denver has a pick. I think it's like 22 or 24 or something. And they also have a lot of young assets because Denver just drafts incredibly well. Maybe they could snag one of those young assets. Maybe it's like a Bull or I don't know what else. I mean, There's a lot of options there with Denver, and the other option was Brooklyn. I don't know exactly what Brooklyn would trade, but
Mm,
I feel like Brooklyn's going to make a move probably. The two guys I feel like they would trade are Jarrett Allen and Karis LeVert.
right.
And I mean I love both of those players. Jarrett Allen would be I mean, I think he'd be great. He could come in and start and not have to be in that log jam with DeAndre Jordan. The only issue is I think he's fairly similar to Jackson Hayes in some ways. So it's just and then there's like no floor spacing there with your center next to Zion. That could cause a little bit of concern, but he's still a great player and he's young. And the other one was Karis LeVert, who's in his mid-20s now, but he really started to break out at the end of the season. And I think the Nets should keep him, but there's been some talk making it sound like that he might be out. And
I think he's gonna be gone.
if that's the case, if you can just swap like Drew Holiday for Karis LeVert, that and maybe even get some future assets, that could be a really good trade for the Pelicans.
I don't know if either of those teams would do those trades.
I don't know.
I'm
It's
not
just
as
something
high
to think
on
about.
Drew Holiday. I don't know. I would much rather have Karis LeVert than Drew Holiday. Um, and I think Denver really likes Bol, so I don't know if they would give him up as an asset.
I mean,
As
if you're holding up a Drew Holiday trade for a Bol, that just sounds ridiculous to me. Like Bol hasn't really done anything, and he didn't even do well in the G League. He just had a few solid games in the bubble. I mean, not really even solid games, but he had just some flashy plays. And Drew Holiday is like a true leader, and he contributes on defense. Great offensive player. He can play make. He can score. He can do everything you need. And that might just elevate that team to the next level because we saw what they did this year.
yeah, I don't know, hard to say. So that's the timer. And moving on, we will be visiting the San Antonio Spurs. So Spurs finished 32 and 39 last season, so it's a little bit better. And they were 11th in the conference. So they had the ninth best offense, which actually kind of surprised me. But their defense was down to 25th, and they have picks 11 and 41.
Yeah, I mean, their roster, they have DeJounte Murray, Patty Mills, Derek White, Lonnie Walker, Keldon Johnson, Rudy Gay, Trey Lyles, Luka Šamanić, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Chimezie Metu. And if you want to go to the free
Any thoughts on
agents,
pick 11?
um, just there might be a guy who drops. Pick 11 is another nice spot where you can pick before like the Pelicans there at 13. A winger wouldn't hurt, and you might be able to get like a Devin Vassell or Isaac Okoro dropping there. Otherwise, I would really like to see the Spurs draft a big. I really don't like
Yeah.
the bigs they have. They have a lot of guards. I mean, and then they have like some already nice young pieces at wing like Walker and Johnson. So maybe you can get a Onyeka Okongwu there. I mean, I probably wouldn't want to take him this high, but Pokusevski could be there. Jalen Smith is an option. And maybe even Obi Toppin would fall that far if teams are really scared about his defense.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they've been playing some guys who definitely are not bigs at power forward. So,
I mean,
yeah, I guess let's see how things fall.
I don't think that's necessarily the issue. Like, I mean, Rudy Gay is kind of that modern four,
Well,
and
yeah,
Trey Lyles, but
those guys are
it's
more
just
like
they're
coming
not
off the
great.
bench. Yeah,
Also, just getting younger there. I mean, Luka Šamanić is. I think he's a really intriguing prospect, and he might just be the power forward of the future for them. But
yeah, this team is definitely
that's
a
still
little
tough to say.
older.
Yeah.
So, free agents, they have DeMar DeRozan has a $27.7 million player option, which I am putting out like a 99% chance he takes because he's not going to get that on the open market. Jakob Poeltl is restricted, and he would The qualifying offer for him is $11.3 million, and I think he might get a little bit more money than that. Um, but I think the Spurs should probably match it because I like what he has to offer, and he's a little younger and maybe a decent building piece for the team. So I said maybe like a 3 to 4 year deal. If you can get somewhere in the range of like 14 to 15 per year, would be pretty good. And then they have some unrestricted free agents. So they have Marco Bellinelli, who, I mean, he's 34. I said you could pretty much sign him for the minimum or he could walk. Bryn Forbes, who I pretty much said the same thing about. Maybe go up to like $2 million on him though. And then Tyler Zeller, who I said he could also just walk. But I think so his team clears up a lot of money next season or after next season. So I think that they should really just like sign some veteran minimums or some middle level exception guys for maybe 1 or 2 years and then wait till 2021 when all the big free agents are out because the Spurs will have money to get a big free agent. And with Popovich being such a respected coach, I could actually see them getting one of these top guys on a max or something. And that if they kind of just wait another year, get some more draft prospects and capital, that they could kind of bring it back in a couple of years.
Yeah, the guy I'm mainly looking there from the free agents is Bryn Forbes. I think it's completely ridiculous to think he'll get $2 million. Bryn Forbes is a guy who
Oh,
started all but one game each of the past 2 seasons for the Spurs that he's played, and he's been one of the best 3-point shooters in the league since he came in. He has a career 40% from the three. He's really important to that team and what they do, and he's the guy I would want to bring back the most. Bellinelli, I'd agree. Minimum if he wants to come back for the minimum. Otherwise, there's just a lot of guys that position. Tyler Zeller, I'm fine with letting go, and Jakob Poeltl. He's still young. I wouldn't mind bringing him back, but I think we'll have to see how much money he gets.
yeah. So I don't really have any trades for them as I don't think anybody wants most of the people on their team that they would trade like their old guys with big contracts. Um, so some of them are expiring. I kind of said the Spurs should just sit and wait.
Yeah, when I see the Spurs, especially this last season, with their aging talent at the top, it just feels like a sinking ship a bit to me. So I would not be opposed to trading DeMar DeRozan if he opts in, which I assume he
Right.
would, and LaMarcus Aldridge. I'm not sure how much he'll get for them, but Marcus Aldridge, a spot I would like to see him is coming back to Portland. He, Portland has a few assets they could trade. They have the 16th pick. They have Anthony Simons. Um, don't think they traded a guy like Gary Trent, but if they would, that'd be
Um,
great for the Spurs. And then maybe a guy like Trevor Ariza to match contracts. But you probably won't be selling high. But especially if you draft a young big that can give them more minutes, they don't necessarily even have to start. If you bring back a guy like Pirtle, you can maybe give more minutes to Shamanich, who I would like to see get more minutes this year. And DeMar DeRozan, the big place I would love to see DeRozan go would be Orlando, because Orlando is just this very average team. They don't really have much of a direction. And they have some contracts they could match. Maybe even do some like Evan Fournier sign and trade or something, just because they really need that scoring threat. Their whole roster has just been like good players, but no one's really been that true scoring threat that DeMar DeRozan could be. And I think he could just fill a void in that Orlando roster. They have a lot of youth, but with some of their top guys like Vucevic and and like Evan Fournier, if they have him still a little older, they are a good team. They're always fringe playoff, near the bottom of the playoff. Maybe an injection of a DeMar DeRozan just when he's on a 1-year deal. They can sell low and see what they get.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, LaMarcus Aldridge has that trade kicker in there,
Yeah.
which could stop them from trading. And I know both of those guys come off after, or they're playing their last season,
Mm-hmm.
their
Which is
contract, and
why
Rudy
you won't get
Gay
anything from him
also
really.
has 1 year left.
Which is good because you're freeing up. You're getting so much money for next offseason, which is a great offseason to have money
Yeah.
with that free agency class.
Also, going back to Bryn Forbes, I don't know why I have $2 million written. They could re-sign him and go over the cap for 5.5. So
I still feel like you get more than that.
yeah, he'd probably get more money. I don't know. I
mean, they do have
don't.
guys to replace them in like Lonnie Walker, Keldon Johnson, Derek White, but it would be a big blow to let Forbes go.
Yeah, I don't think they have cap space to keep him.
No, not this offseason.
What a team's gonna give him. So I don't know. I think he's gonna be gone. Um, yeah, I don't know. The Spurs aren't really a very exciting team. They're just very old and lack any stars, I would say, to actually make a push at anything next season. But that's all I have on the Spurs. We have about a minute left on the timer. If you have anything to add, if not, we will move on.
Not really.
All right. We will move on then. So our next team is the Memphis Grizzlies. And the Grizzlies were 34-39 last season. They finished ninth in the conference. If you remember in the bubble, had that big lead on the 8th spot and then didn't do very well. A lot of other teams did really well. And then they lost that play-in game to the Trailblazers. So they were 20th offensively and 15th defensively last season. They obviously have Ja Morant as their big highlight piece. And then they only have pick 40 this year, which we won't really address since it's a mid-second round pick. But who is on their team?
Yeah, so under contract next season, they have Ja Morant, Tyus Jones, Dylan Brooks, Grayson Allen, Marco Guduric, Justice Winslow, Kyle Anderson, Jaren Jackson Jr., Brandon Clark, Jonte Porter, Jonas Valanciunas, and Gorgie Jang.
So for free agents, they have DeAnthony Melton is restricted, and his qualifying offer is about 1.9. So essentially a minimum. I kind of said either or on this one. He could walk, but he offers some solid defensive abilities, so you could also keep him since he's only 22. And then Josh Jackson and Anthony Tolliver are unrestricted free agents. And Josh Jackson, to keep him and go over the cap, they'd have to pay him $8.9 million, which is way too much money for him, in my opinion. So I said they should let him walk, but maybe he could be like a mid-level exception target for their team. And then Anthony Tolliver, they just signed him kind of right at the end of the season to finish it out. And I said he could probably walk too. And then Jonte Porter has a team option on him for 1.5, I believe. And I think you can get someone better than him for a minimum. Their big problem money-wise is Dion Waiters. They are paying him $12.65 million just of dead cap, so he's not even on their team, but they're paying him that, and that really is taking up a lot of their cap space that they could use to sign more people. but that will come off after next season. Free agent targets, I said maybe they could get Bellinelli potentially on the mid-level exception, just to improve some of the shooting on their team. Otherwise, there really is not a lot this team could do.
No, they're pretty strapped for cash. The only person I'm really looking at for the free agency is D'Anthony Melton, who they have the restricted rights on.
Right.
And D'Anthony Melton has has had his role in this team. His stats don't pop off, but he's one of those guys that contributes more than you see in the stat sheet. He's only 22, so he's very young. I have no idea how much money he's going to get, but
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be a lot.
I mean, I think it might be a decent amount. Just
I don't know.
I think the league's going to value what he contributes a bit, but then when you factor in his age, just with how little cap the Grizzlies have for this coming season with that waiters contract that they have to pay and like Gorgie Jenks 17 million, they don't really have this cap space to really sign anyone. He's
No.
restricted, so they can go over a little bit, but he's the main guy I'd want to bring back if, or just really sign at all if I can. Otherwise, I'd pretty much just run the team back.
Yeah. I guess they just pretty much their goal is just hope everybody improves. I mean, they have a pretty young team for the most part,
Yeah.
minus their centers. Um, but yeah, they hopefully they hopefully should be making a playoff push next season. So
I would think so.
I don't know. In the West, I mean, it'll be tricky. Everybody's fighting for that, but I think that's kind of what they're looking for as a goal next season.
I think it'll also be interesting to
Uh,
see how much Justice Winslow comes in and contributes because he's yet to play with them after being in that Iguodala trade,
right.
and he might come in and take one of those starting spots. But just still, just the natural progression of all their young guys, I think for sure they should definitely be like a bottom playoff team.
And I believe, I guess it depends on the season starts, but I don't think Jaren Jackson Jr. will be healthy
Mm-hmm.
when the season starts, which hurts them a lot as he's probably their second best player.
I mean, luckily for them, they still have Brandon Clark and
Right.
guy like Kyle Anderson who come in and definitely play.
Yeah. Trade ideas, I think it's a little tricky. I thought they could maybe get rid of Valanciunas if they really trust Brandon Clark, but Jaren Jackson out. That could be a little tricky unless they're fine with Gorgie Jang. I don't see them getting rid of the Gorgie Jang contract. I don't think anyone would really trade for that. Because Valanciunas can still offer a little bit. Uh, as to where he would go, I'm not sure. I really just think this team's kind of stuck where they're at.
Yeah, I don't really think there's any trade to be made here. They have, unless they want to trade like one of the younger guys, like a Grayson Allen or a Jonte Porter, maybe. But otherwise, there's not really a lot. I like Valanciunas on the team, and I'd probably just keep him. And Gorgie Jang pretty much only be used in a salary dump, or unless they wanted to bring
Right.
on, maybe they'd get like a pick for a guy who has like 2 years left on his contract. Personally, I would just keep the cap open for next year,
Yeah, I agree.
but
Um, especially
it's
with
always an
all that
option.
dead capital opening up next season.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're not a very exciting team this offseason, I don't think.
No,
Well, we've 3.5 minutes left on them, but I don't have more to add.
no, I don't really either. There's not really a whole lot for them to do this offseason.
Okay, so the fourth team we are looking at is the Dallas Mavericks. They finished last season 43-32, which was seventh in the West, and Dallas was a very exciting team in the playoffs. With kind of the emergence of Luka as a superstar and a household name a little bit, and playing the Clippers kind of close, though they did come up short in that first round. So Dallas was number one offense. They're pretty much one of the best offenses ever, and we're 18th defensively. And then they have picks 18 and 31.
Yeah, on their roster, under contract, they have DeLon Wright, Jalen Brunson, Luka Doncic, Seth Curry, Dorian Finney-Smith, Justin Jackson, Maxi Kleba, Kristaps Porzingis, Dwight Powell, and Boban Marjanovic.
Yes, so they on their team have a couple player options. There's Willie Cauley-Stein, which is a player option of $2.3 million, and I think he's going to test the market and get more than that. And then Tim Hardaway Jr. is at about 19 million, which I believe he will take. Unrestricted free agents for this team. There is Courtney Lee, which to keep and go over the cap, they would have to give him 19 million. So I believe he's going to walk. There's JJ Barea, who I didn't really feel strongly about either way. Pretty much he'll get the minimum or he can leave. And Michael Kidd Gilchrist, who I thought they could walk on. And then Trey Burke, who kind of joined them just right at the end. I think they really liked Trey Burke and what they could get for him. So I'm not really sure how much money he would get in the market, but he could potentially be like a mid-level exception guy for them to bring back and have coming off the bench.
Yeah, they have. I mean, they have a lot of free agents here.
Yeah,
JJ Barea is interesting, as you said. They have a lot of guards, especially if Luka's just going to be the starting point guard. He's just been on the team with the team for a long time.
right. It's kind of thought, why not
Where
just keep
gonna be
him?
tough, but I mean, Trey Burke definitely showed some promise, so
Yeah,
could be a position where you just keep Burke. Courtney Lee is kind of a shell of his former self and has been for quite some time, and finally his contract's up. I mean, maybe if he can come back for a minimum or something, I would be opposed. And then Brian Brokoff, he can walk. Michael Kidd Gilchrist, I wouldn't mind bringing back if he's cheap.
I believe
I think
Brokoff signed with the 76ers, so
I did. Okay.
he's
Yeah, he did.
technically a Dallas free agent anymore.
Okay. Yeah, I see them. Oh well. Well, Michael Kidd Gilchrist, I think he contributes. He definitely contributes, like with his athleticism and defense. Been a big fan of. I mean, I've always been a big fan of him. I know he's kind of a bust, but
Yeah,
he's still not that old. And considering
he's 27.
he's only 27. Considering he was drafted all the way back in 2012. Like, if he wants to come back for cheap, I would definitely take him.
Yeah, he's probably one of those minimum guys if they
Mm.
want him. So other targets, since their offense is so good, I think they really could focus on defensive players. This free agents, so I thought maybe a guy like Josh Jackson, who pretty much offers nothing offensively, but has shown previously in his career, not so much this year, that he has pretty good defensive abilities. Could be maybe a guy they bring in. Um, they're also a team that doesn't really have a lot of space to do anything this offseason.
Yeah, I think their biggest. I mean, I think their biggest thing they're going to do this offseason is the draft.
Right.
If you want to get into that, where they have picks 18 and 31, which are both, I think they're both going to get players that can come in and contribute this next season. I wouldn't mind to see them get a defensive wing, which is why I would consider maybe a 3 and D guy like Josh Green if he's there, a Tyler Bay for his defense. And I mean, Tyler Bay may even be there at 31. I don't know. Otherwise, there's going to be other wingers if they want a winger. Their their whole like post position just feels a little odd to me. Not saying I dislike it, but Porzingis is Porzingis. He's great. I think
True.
I mean, I see him more as just a center just because he's 7'3" than a power forward. And they have Maxi Kleba, who is on a good contract, and he's a great player. Dwight Powell, who was hurt most of last season, he's also on a really long contract, but it's not terribly big. He may start, he may come off the bench. I'd want to see what he's going to look like coming back from injury. And then Boban is just on a cheap deal, and Boban's really good in the few minutes he plays. He's not a guy
Yeah.
who's going to go out there and give you a lot of minutes, but when he does, they're usually pretty solid minutes. And otherwise, there's a lot of guards in this draft. Point guards, combo guards. It may not hurt to add another one of them. But I'd probably be looking for a wing, ideally a defensive minded wing in the draft. Or maybe even two.
Yeah. And then trades, I don't think this team's going to do any trading. I think they look at that Clippers series, and I mean, now we know the Clippers aren't necessarily the team everybody thought them to be in the playoffs. Um, I think they look at that series, and if Kristaps wasn't ejected in that game and didn't get hurt, and Luka maybe didn't have his sprained ankle, I think they thought they could win that series or at least make it really, really close. And with just one more year of this team meshing and coming together, I believe they are contending. That's very understandable, and I expect them. I really do think they'll be one of the top teams in the West.
Yeah, a young guy better. You saw the improvement from Luka from year one. Best players in Dwight Powell back, and those two draft picks, which I think are going to be solid contributors on their team this next season. They should be primed to be one of the top teams in the league.
Yeah, I agree. Shall we move on?
Houston?
Yes. So our last team we were talking about today is the Houston Rockets. So they were 44-28, which is good for fourth in the West. They were the sixth best offensive team and 14th best defensive team, and they have absolutely no draft picks. But who is on the roster?
Yeah, they have under contract Russell Westbrook, Chris Clemens, James Harden, Eric Gordon, Ben McLemore, Robert Covington, Daniel House, and PJ Tucker.
Yes, so they have a couple options here. They have David
Nwaba.
Nwaba. It was a team option for 1.9. I thought you could maybe let him go. Uh, you can probably get a guy for a minimum that's a little more. I don't think he's even played a minute for Houston, so he's probably going to go. And then they have Austin Rivers on a player option, which is 2.4 million, and I think he's going to go and try to get more than that on the market. But I could also see him coming back potentially. And then they have several unrestricted free agents. So they have Bruno Caboclo, Tyson Chandler, Thabo Cephalosha, Damari Carroll, and Jeff Green. And I kind of look at all those guys as probably minimum guys. I think Jeff Green would be useful to bring back for sure. I think he did well. Uh, Coming back for the team, even though he pretty much sat out a full season, he still shows he has a bench scoring ability. Thabo Cephalosha, I also think would be useful to bring back. The other guys I'm not super strong on either way.
Yeah, they're just in a really tough position. They only have 8 guys under contract,
Right.
and I don't really I don't really see any of these guys and feel like I really want them back necessarily. Like, I mean, Austin Rivers, I think would be great if he picks up his option. David Nwaba I like, but as you said, he has not played for the Rockets.
Right.
And then, like, I mean, Jeff Green has been solid. If they can get Green back, I would definitely take Green, but I think he could get a. He might be able to get some money somewhere.
I don't know.
Depends.
I mean, he didn't play. Like, I mean, he has sat out a full year, so
Yeah, and
I really think he's going to be one of those guys that signs the minimum, and you're like, oh, that's a really good minimum.
maybe we will have to see. He is a bit older.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I mean, no one else I really want to bring back. They have some solid names that of guys who've been solid role players in the past, but they're not playing on this team and they're old, and it seems like they're just nearing the end of their career. But then to go along with that, they just don't really have money to bring back anyone.
Yeah.
So or sign
I
any.
don't
I
know.
mean, or sign anyone. Just could because you have two super max contracts with Westbrook and Harden.
Yeah, that makes it tough. Westbrook's definitely not worth 41 million in my opinion, but I don't really know what to do about that contract.
Yeah,
As 41, I mean that's probably the top highest paid player in the league. Probably top 3 on that contract next season. Uh, so it's really hard to get or money back for that. Um, sorry, I was incorrect. Jeff Green did play last season. I don't know why I thought. I think he got cut and then re-signed by Houston. Um,
hmm
so he didn't maybe put in a full season. But yeah, you have Westbrook and James Harden making over $41 million each. And then when the cap is only at 109, assuming it stays the same, that really takes all of it. And then you got Eric Gordon at almost 17 and Robert Covington at 12.
yeah.
Um, Go ahead.
I mean the only thing I can really see this team doing to do anything is get rid of Eric Gordon, but
Right.
that'd be so tough because he still has like entering next season. He has 4 years on his contract, and it just gets bigger and bigger every year. And
Yeah.
I don't think he's been playing like he's worth that contract, which is last season. He's 31. He's only getting older. I don't know why a team would take on that contract. But that's the only thing I can really see them doing to change anything.
Yeah, I think this playoff showed that this team is not good enough to really make a run at it. I mean, 2 years ago they were in the conference finals, I believe, but I just don't see the pieces they have and see that they are truly a contending team. But with a new coach, I think they're just gonna bring everybody back mostly. Eric Gordon, I agree he is the piece to move if you can move anybody because I don't think he's anywhere close worth uh what type of money he's getting. But I mean, just contracts in that area that are maybe trade-worthy guys like Karis LeVert or James Johnson, but I don't really know if Brook I don't know if either of those teams, Brooklyn for Karis LeVert or Minnesota James Johnson. Minnesota, I can't imagine would want this contract at all. Brooklyn, I don't think they would do Karis LeVert for Eric Gordon. Yeah, Eric Gordon at all, just straight up. So
Yeah,
I
and
don't know. The Rockets are in a tough place. I think they need to blow it up personally, but with just the two super maxes they have, I don't really know how they can do that.
no, I think they really also need to add a big. I don't think starting 6'5" PJ Tucker at center ended up working well for them in the end. And just looking at like these teams in the West you're competing with, I don't know how they're going to go out there and like defend guys like Jokic or Anthony Davis just without that presence. And but at the same time, with the way their team's constructed, they need a guy who can shoot threes, which getting all that and with however like assets and cap space they have is really tough. The only guy I can really think of is Miles Turner, is possibly on the trade block. Really good shot blocker. He can definitely stretch the floor and shoot the three as well. But like the only way you can really get him is getting up Aaron Gordon or Eric Gordon, and I just don't see why the Pacers would want to take on that contract
No.
at all.
I mean, I really liked Houston's defense in the playoffs, especially against Oklahoma City. But I mean, Oklahoma City also found out that they were better when they didn't have a big on the floor against Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, they didn't throw out any Steven Adams
Yeah, but the big
out there
difference
with
is
PJ
like
Tucker.
Jokic and Davis are just completely different
Right.
monsters than
Yeah,
Steven
I mean,
Adams.
Houston got out in the second round to LA, and I mean, that series wasn't even close. So Houston got a game, but it was very clear they were not really even anywhere close to competing. So yeah, they tried the small ball lineup. I don't think it was a success, but now they actually went too small and have no taller players on their team. But yeah, I think D'Antoni saw the writing on the wall, so his team was never going to do anything, so he left. Uh, it'll be interesting to see who comes onto this team. Now that Doc Rivers is available, he's kind of a star coach. And with Westbrook and Harden, the personalities of those two guys, maybe they try a guy like Doc Rivers to come in. I could see Doc going more to Philly, just given this roster and how weird it is and how they try to play people. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think their team's just kind of trapped. They're not really going to make any moves. I mean, as long as they have Westbrook and Harden, they're going to be a very good team, but I don't see them competing with that.
Yeah, I think that the trick for Westbrook is to be healthy, and I don't know, Harden. I don't know if Harden is actually. I mean, he's so good offensively, but I think there's now some questions on him of whether he can be the best player on a team or kind of your number one scoring option, because he's shown in the playoffs he can kind of just drift away and never really takes over a game like you need him to, and like the teams that have moved further than Houston have shown that they have. So Houston will just try to win with offense. I thought sixth this past season was honestly a little low for them. I think where their team is at, they need to be like top 3 offensive team to be better. But I don't know. I don't think they'll be as good next season, record wise. But we will find out.
Well, thanks for listening to this week's podcast, and please rate us 5 stars on your preferred platform. This helps other listeners find our podcast. Next week, we'll do the same breakdown, but for the Atlantic Division teams.
So you can find us on social media. We are on Twitter at Miracle Sports NW and Instagram and Facebook at Miracle Sports Network. And then we also post all of these podcasts to YouTube, also under Miracle Sports Network. So please subscribe there. But if you would like to hear us sooner, please download our podcast, as the YouTube video will be released 24 hours later than our podcast is. You can also check out our website at anchor.fm/thehookshot and get links to all our social media and all our previous episodes. But we will see you next week.